Good afternoon. Well, I guess it's almost afternoon, everybody. Thank you all for sticking with me this afternoon to go over some of the QuickBooks information. A little bit about me to get started. I am located in the Chambersburg office. I have been with SEK for about 4 years now. Um, and I had multiple years of private accounting experience where I did a lot with QuickBooks before I started here at SEK. Christine, if you want to let me go ahead and share my screen, I will try to do this seamlessly here. All right, hopefully everybody can see that now. First thing I wanted to go over is QuickBooks did just recently go through and announce their pricing increase. I am going to go over both desktop and online only because I know that there are some users here today that are still using desktop and considering making that switch to online. The first thing, we're just going to briefly go over this here. As you can see on my screen, there's the listing of the pricing. If you are currently using QuickBooks Desktop Pro or Plus, it is increasing by about $50 per year. And if you have multiple users, each additional user, I apologize, is going up to $310. If you're using Premier, it's increasing by $70, and each additional user is going up to $465. This pricing increase does take place on October the 1st. I will say that QuickBooks Desktop will eventually be sunsetting, and they are trying to push everybody into QuickBooks Enterprise. Down below here quickly before I move on is the increased pricing. All this information can be found on the Intuit website if you have any additional questions here. We have been kind of making a push for our desktop users to switch to Enterprise. It is essentially the same thing as desktop. It's just a more robust version. And the nice thing about Enterprise Gold is it does include your payroll. So if you have any additional questions on any of these, you can certainly reach out to myself or anybody here at SEK can get you in contact with a pro advisor within your office. Moving down to QuickBooks Online, the price increase is not specific to desktop. Unfortunately, online is increasing as well. Here you can see the current monthly pricing for the different versions of online. Simple Start probably would not apply to anybody here unless you had a small business kind of on the side. Simple Start is very, very, very basic with very little functionality. As far as class tracking, even some reporting is not available with Simple Start. So we usually start with Essentials whenever we're selling. Just to note, this is a monthly price, not an annual price like if you're used to with desktop or enterprise. These do take place on July 1st. And unlike desktop, you don't get to lock in at a lower rate for the upcoming year. These pricings, so even if you purchase today at the lower rate, at the $65 essentially for Essentials, you would get that price increase to $75 on your July billing cycle.
Hey, Kendra, we have a question.
Yep.
Is Enterprise the same as QuickBooks Online?
No, QuickBooks Enterprise is different than QuickBooks Online. The main difference is Enterprise is server-based. So that would be stored on your server, whereas QuickBooks Online is cloud-based. And then there's some differences with appearance and functionality as well.
Okay. And then somebody shared that nonprofits with a TechSoup subscription can get online for much cheaper annual amount, around $80.
Yes, that is correct. I was actually going to bring that up here at the end. So TechSoup is an option for a lot of the nonprofits. It's just a website. You can go out there. And I believe you have to purchase your subscription through TechSoup. You can't like go out online and then try to input your company ID or your subscription number into it later. So make sure if you do use TechSoup, you are purchasing directly through them and not through the Intuit website and trying to do it on the back end. Was that all the questions,
Yeah,
Christine?
that's all. You can go ahead now.
Okay, thank you. And then just really quick, here are the QuickBooks Online payroll price increases, just for a quick reference here. And again, same deal here. All these new prices do take effect on July 1st. Something else that I wanted to point out, and this will be something we touch on a little bit later here in my presentation, wanted to point out this per employee per month fee. It is in addition to the flat rate that you are charged. Per employee means per active employee. So if you are a seasonal based organization, or if you have if you have students who come in for just a couple months, it is pertinent that you inactivate those employees, which is different than deleting, obviously. But if you just inactivate those employees, you won't be hit with this additional per employee per month check or fee. And another question we get a lot with this is, does it matter how many paychecks there are that month? Meaning, if your weekly, is the price different than if you just pay monthly? The answer is no. That $650 doesn't matter if you write them 10 checks or one check. That is the amount you will pay. So now moving on up, there is another poll question. Make sure everybody sees that and answers that.
Kendra, I'm going to interrupt you one more time.
Yep.
For now, there's probably more. But one question is, does QuickBooks utilize fund accounting?
So QuickBooks, a little bit of clarification there. I believe you're referring to if you have multiple funds. It would, yes and no, unfortunately, is the answer. So a lot of our organizations that have multiple funds, there's a couple different ways you can do that. One of the downfalls of QuickBooks Online is in desktop, you can have multiple company files linked to that same subscription. That is not the case with QuickBooks Online. For each company file, you would need to have a separate Intuit Online subscription. So for example, if you have 3 company files within your one desktop subscription, whenever you make the transition to QuickBooks Online, you would have to purchase 3 separate subscriptions. Now you can purchase different levels of subscriptions for price savings, but that is one of the downfalls to online if you have multiple funds. Another workaround that we have seen, and this is more so for nonprofits, being that you could utilize class tracking, which means that you would have one company file, but whenever you pull a report, you would have 3 different classes that you could report with. That's definitely a conversation that's kind of like high level, and it's definitely a case by case basis. So again, feel free to reach out for specifics on what you're working with there.
Kendra, somebody did say that they use class for funds in the enterprise version.
Yes.
And then somebody was asking, I believe this goes back to the pricing. Is the pricing per employee, not per user?
Correct. So this is payroll specific here. So so if you just had the course subscription here, the $650 per employee per month does not look at users who are utilizing your QuickBooks file. This is how many people you are paying. So that's what that fee is based on there. All right, moving on. I did want to do a quote unquote shameless plug here. Today we only have about 20 minutes to go over some of this, but we will be hosting a user group. It's another free offering here from SCK. We don't have specific dates and times yet, but if you're signed up for our updates, you'll be the first to know there. It'll be the beginning of October, and it'll probably be somewhere here in the Chambersburg, Greencastle area. So just stay on the lookout for that. We will have a desktop session and an online session. We just did one in Hanover and had a very good attendance and feedback there. So it'll be myself and probably 2 other pro advisors that'll go into much more detail of what we're going to cover here today. Couple things that I wanted to go over, about four bullet points that I wanted to go over today. The first is a feature that I feel is very underutilized. And I can assure you that everybody else on this call who has already presented would appreciate this, especially when it comes to financial reporting, is in QuickBooks Online, you have the ability to attach documents to just about anything that you do here in QuickBooks Online. So the first thing that I wanted to show you is how to attach it on an entry level basis. And then we'll also go over how you can attach it to either a vendor or a customer. So just real quickly here, if you are creating an invoice or entering a bill from a vendor, you would just go in like you normally do. And once my internet catches up here, down here at the bottom, you can add an attachment. This is not limited to a image. Like if you have a JPEG file, you could do a PDF. You could also save emails that you could add here. This is definitely nice, especially if you have a question on a transaction that you wanted to ask either somebody within your organization, or if you wanted to ask your accountant. This here can be seen by anybody who has access to your file, whether it be another user or an accountant user. So definitely something that I feel is underutilized and can answer a lot of questions, especially if, like, we're going through your 990 and have a question on a specific. This could save an email if we're wondering what the specific transaction is about. Another place where this adding attachments is very useful is everybody's favorite subject, 1099s. We're not going to go too much into it, but everybody's always looking for W-9s and making sure that we have that tax ID number when it comes time to processing those 1099s in January. So in case you missed it here, I went into our vendor section and just clicked on edit here with this vendor. And if you scroll down here, here is where you can add your attachment. So you could put a W-9. This also could be utilized if you had specific contracts, or if you had donors and you had some sort of written information from the donor that you wanted to keep track of. And again, QuickBooks Online is cloud-based, so anybody who has access to your file would be able to view this. And just another quick plug here for your 1099 tracking. This is also where you would put your information in for 1099 tracking. And no, we will not be going over 1099s today, unfortunately. That is much, much bigger topic than just 20 minutes here. One thing I also want to point out is this can also be on journal entries. You can, like I said, add an attachment to just about any entry that you create here within QuickBooks Online. Next thing I wanted to focus on is our bank transaction screen. A couple things I wanted to point out here. Whenever you're going through, so here is a checking example. Some of the things I wanted to point out here is, again, with the 1099 tracking, it is absolutely imperative whenever you're entering in a transaction through the bank transactions window here that you enter a vendor. The way QuickBooks Online tracks everything for 1099 purposes is through the vendor. Yes, it does look at the expense account that it's associated with, but primarily it is this vendor account. Unfortunately, this past year, we saw a lot of our QuickBooks Online customers that did not have the vendor listed here. And unfortunately, a lot of 1099s went out incorrectly because they did not have this vendor information in here. Next thing I wanted to point out while we're in here is this account here. For whatever reason, I always like to say you can tell that QuickBooks Online was created by IT professionals and not accounting professionals. A lot of times your QuickBooks Online will default to an uncategorized account, whether it be income or expense. under very, very few circumstances should you be using anything that starts with uncategorized whenever you're entering transactions. So within this account here, you should, for all intents purposes, never be using something that starts with uncategorized. That is a default QuickBooks Online account. So if you ever have questions, we would suggest using a miscellaneous income, miscellaneous expense account, or your Ask My Accountant account here. A lot of times things will get lost in here and just reported incorrectly. Another feature that I wanted to point out, sometimes this is missed when by multiple clients here. Let's say you are somebody who only does the bookkeeping, once a month, once a quarter, whatever it may be, and you're utilizing this bank feed. One of the features that I appreciate the most with this is you can sort by any of these columns. So let's say, you come in the month and you have 300 transactions here, and that just feels overwhelming. What I like to do is I like to sort by payee. Because then, like, let's say you had a whole bunch of sheets, your fuel charges. You can go in and select all of them in bulk and then accept them or edit them if you need to. So that is just kind of a nice little time saver. Another feature here on this window that's often overlooked is this little box right here, where you can sort or filter by date. So again, this could be something if you're linking a new account and you accidentally pull in a bunch of dates that aren't necessary. You can go in and pull like prior year transactions that you don't need to, select all, and then click exclude. So just a couple different features there that I wanted to make sure everybody knew of here on this bank transactions window. Also here, I've almost forgot to mention, so anything on this window here is unposted, meaning that it has not hit your general ledger, which also means you cannot search for the transaction in this main search window up here. That is why they have this separate description here. So if you haven't had a chance to go in and add all of this information and somebody wants to know, hey, did the $2,500 deposit that I made yesterday, has that hit the bank account yet? This is where you would search for that to see if it came in through your bank. The next area I wanted to focus on, and probably where we'll spend the majority of our time, and this was based upon feedback from our previous presenters, is we really wanted to focus on cleanup within your QuickBooks Online file. Something we see a lot of is a lot of outdated transactions, or unfortunately, sometimes with the nonprofits and any government entities that may be on today, is with turnover comes a lot of chart of accounts that can sometimes get out of hand and extremely large. And then if you have certain fundraising projects that you're no longer using, those old accounts can just kind of sit out there and become cumbersome whenever it comes to reporting in your audits and your financial, endeavors there. So as a general rule of thumb, we try to say that every, or if you haven't used an account in 3 years, chances are you're probably not going to use it again. So the first area we want to look at here is your chart of accounts cleanup. My suggestion here is you would run 2 reports. The first one is you would run your report of your chart of accounts by simply going here to a chart of accounts and clicking run report. This is going to give you a listing of all of your accounts that are currently active within your QuickBooks file. The next report that you're going to go to is run a profit and loss. Just for sakes of this presentation, we'll go in here real quickly. You'll click a profit and loss, and then just sort your dates by 3 years. This will give you any income and expense account that has been used in 3 years' time. You'll print those reports and basically just do a compare and contrast and see which accounts are not included on the profit and loss And those are the accounts that you can then inactivate. So how you would do that is you're going to come back here to your chart of accounts. And then just very simply, so let's say like here, this Visa credit card you're no longer using. You're just going to go here and click make inactive. And then it's going to come up and say, are you sure you want to inactivate? And then you would just click yes. So as simple as that. The next thing I wanted to show you here with your chart of accounts is sometimes we see where you have two accounts that are very similar to each other and they can be combined. So here under legal and professional fees, you'll see that you have an expense account for accounting and an expense account for bookkeeper. 9 times out of 10, those are going to be either the same firm or, they can just be combined. So how you would combine these accounts, or the term QuickBooks uses is merge. So let's say we want to keep accounting. What we're going to do is we're going to go in here to the bookkeeper, and we're going to edit it and change the name to accounting. Then we're going to click save. And then here QuickBooks is going to say you already have an account with that name. Yes, that's exactly what we want to do. Go ahead and merge the accounts. Click save. And then now when we scroll down here, we will see that there is only one accounting account now, and that bookkeeper has successfully been merged. Next thing I wanted to point out here with our reports, what we can look at. As I said before, with the uncategorized in the bank transactions window, whenever you're looking at your reports, there's a few accounts that should never be utilized. The first would be Ask My Accountant. Let me clarify, it can be used, but only on a temporary basis. Obviously, anything that's in Ask My Accountant should be reviewed with you and your accounting person, your bookkeeper, whomever you refer to there. Also with client inquiry, that balance should always be 0. Obviously, anything in there should be either an expense or a income. And those will need to be appropriately accounted for before any final financial documents are presented. Another account that we see a lot, there is another poll question for your review. Another account that we see utilized incorrectly a lot is, once I get my scroll, is this opening balance equity account. So right now there's a negative 9,337. A lot of times this account, especially in QuickBooks Online, gets used when you're adding a new account. And I want to show you real quickly how that happens. So in your chart of accounts, if you're adding a new account, so let's say you purchased a piece of equipment, get back up here to the top. You purchased a new piece of equipment and you're adding in a loan. Let me real quickly here. Whenever you're adding in a loan and you enter something, or a checking account, whatever it may be, and you put something here in this unpaid balance, whenever you put an amount in this unpaid balance, it is automatically going to go to that open balance equity account. This is incorrect very simply for the fact of whenever you're entering in a loan, that opening balance, that money was deposited somewhere, whether it be directly to your asset, whether it be to your checking account, that other side of the transaction has to be entered. And putting it here in this unpaid balance just creates more work for you essentially. And again, too broad of or too detailed of a topic to get into. So just speak with whomever your accounting professional is, and we can help you appropriately add that balance in there. So again, when it comes to cleanup, our suggestion here is if you come and you find that you have an amount here in your opening balance equity, if you just click on this amount, it will bring up all of the transactions that are in this account. And then you would just go in and have to reclass those appropriately. Something else to look for that is unfortunately not an example here. is any sort of negative account balance, especially when it comes to like a payroll liability or sales tax liability. Anytime that you see a negative number on a financial report should be a red flag and cause areas of concern. Let me just see if the profit and loss has any. This would be a red flag. So here you can see discounts given. That negative amount makes sense because it's a discount. So obviously it's going to decrease your income. Sometimes this can happen with if you selected the wrong account whenever you're entering a deposit or a check. So just any of those sort of transactions would need to be looked at a little closer. So anytime you see a negative number, obviously that is cause for concern. I haven't been looking at the questions, Christina. I don't think we have any here.
No, there are none.
Okay. All right. Just wanted to make sure before I moved on. The next area that I wanted to touch on is any sort of old account or old transaction. I apologize. We see a lot of this, that there are just stale dated transactions. The easiest way that I feel that you can get a hold of these transactions is whenever you're doing your bank reconciliation. This is also a shameless plug to please do your bank reconciliations on a regular basis. So whenever you're in here, of course, let's go back here. Whenever you're in here doing your bank reconciliation, so let's say, it's June 3rd, I'm working on my May bank reconciliation. Here I can see that there's a February 3rd bill payment. So that means that it is a check that I wrote to Robertson and Associations that has not been cashed. I would say, if it hasn't cleared by the end of May, maybe it got lost in the mail. Maybe it got sat on somebody's desk for a signature and it got misplaced. So that is definitely something that I would reach out to them. Hey, I sent you this check back in February. Do you have record of it? Was it missed on your end, my end? Let's just see what's going on here. This is also a moment to say that any check that you wrote that has not been cleared for 3 years needs to be reported to Pennsylvania Unclaimed Property. How you do that is you just go out, just literally Google Pennsylvania Unclaimed Property. It'll take you to their website and then you can fill in the information. Also, Unclaimed Property is a website you should be checking for your nonprofit, for yourself, for your family, just to make sure that you don't have any unclaimed property out there that belongs to you. Another thing you can be looking at here is see here on March the 25th, there is 2 sales tax payments, both say Q1, but there's 10 cents difference. So this would be a moment where you could go in and say, hey, chances are this is duplicated, one of which I put the wrong amount in. Let's go in here and see what's going on. And then voiding the incorrect payment just to kind of keep that clean. Hopefully there's no questions here. Let's say that this payment here, you did have to reissue. You could very simply just go in here and click on your edit and it will take you back to that screen. What you would do, proper procedure would be you just change your payment date and then click your print later and then reprint that check. That'll essentially void that old check and then reissue with a new date. So once you have gone through and you have cleaned everything up appropriately, you feel confident with all of your numbers, the next step is to go in and enter a closing date. We suggest using closing dates for multiple reasons, especially if you have quote unquote multiple hands in the pot. So if you have a lot of users that are getting in and doing multiple transactions. So let's say you go in on a quarterly basis and perform this cleanup. You go in, you make sure that all of your accounts are accurate and up to date. You've gone through, you've done your chart of accounts cleanup. You don't have anything sitting out there in accounts that shouldn't be. You would go in and add your closing date. How you would do this is you go up here to your gear icon and click on account and settings. Once this opens up, you're going to go here to your advanced window and you're going to click here where it says close the books and you can enter your closing date. You can enter closing dates as much and as often as you want. So let's say you know that you're done through April 2025. I unfortunately can't show you this in a sample file, but there are different options when it comes to closing. One of the options that we always suggest to do is the allow changes after a password is entered. By entering a password, it still allows you, the password keeper, to still enter or edit a transaction from before that closing date. So let's say you forgot about a check that was written, somebody hand wrote it, and it finally clears the bank. You will still be allowed to enter that check with the appropriate date after entering that password. So it doesn't completely close the books. It just makes it a lot more difficult to change those financial reports after that closing date.